It's Friday, July 3rd, everybody. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright, so this is basically the Naughty Dog show. We got a lot of Naughty Dog news to talk about, but before we get to that, let's talk about this firmware update that came out for PS4, which is mandatory if you want to log into PSN ever again, and it's firmware 2.55, and it includes software stability, and we're likely going to see a lot more of these until the actual next major firmware release, which is possibly 3.0 or something, and then we'll get like 3.01 and 0.2 and 0.3. A lot of software stability, basically. A lot of great stuff to look forward to. And now slightly less exciting news, because I know you can't beat firmware updates, but Nyko partners have discussed that PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have disappointing sales in China. Of course, there was a China ban, a law in China banning consoles for a very long time. That, you know, consoles are finally legal over there now. Microsoft and Sony are both finally in that region selling their systems, and they're not doing all that well. Apparently, combined system sales are around 500,000 units, so, you know, split that in half between the two, depending on, you know, which console's doing better or whatever. But that's really not that much, especially since, you know, when we talked about this how long ago, we kept discussing, you know, China's a huge market. If they even sold, you know, if Sony only sold 1% of, you know, sold a PS4 to 1% of the population, that's still millions of consoles, and clearly they're not even getting nowhere even close to that. And, you know, looking at this, kind of understandable that they're not making they're not making huge ground there, because, you know, China has for so long not been available to consoles, so people aren't necessarily used to, I don't know, you know, having that option, especially since China is so accustomed to like playing PC. China loves PC. Like, that's totally what they're doing right now. They're not really into consoles. Also, consoles are very expensive. It's just kind of that space where they've gone so long without them that, you know, it's gotten to the point where you bring them in now and they're super expensive. People don't want them. People don't need them particularly. So hopefully we'll see increased sales of both systems soon in that region. All right, let's talk some Last Guardian. Shuhei Yoshida, of course, SCU Worldwide President for Sony, discussed how with the Last Guardian, they probably wouldn't have done it. They probably would have canceled that game if people actually weren't asking for it for so long. That is pretty much what he said. In fact, he said, and I quote, "Tech issues aside, the game was still in early development, so we had to have a really strong desire to continue the project and rebuild on PS4. And of course, we believed in the vision of Ueda-san, and Ueda-san and the core teams really wanted to see this realized, and so did I. Having so many people asking about this game was great encouragement for us to continue the development. If everyone stopped asking about it, probably we would have," referring to actually canceling the game itself. You know, I see that for sure. When you're a multi-million-dollar company, if people don't even want one particular thing that you're working on, then yeah, why not cancel it? But you also got to figure, okay, this is a multi-million-dollar company. Of course, they're going to say things like this to, you know, sort of please the consumer, the consumer eye. You know, interviews like this are going to be everywhere, plastered all over the internet. So even if they don't truly mean something like that, they're going to obviously say that, like, oh yeah, we did it because people kept asking for it. But I think this is one of those moments where they definitely did do it because people were asking for it, because that's definitely a Sony move. Sony typically funds all sorts of games that are not going to be commercial successes. They do all sorts of crazy things where they know they're not going to see tons of money back, possibly no money back at all. They just do stuff like that. So especially with such a big title like The Last Guardian, yeah, I can totally see this being truthful. Alright, let's talk a little bit more about market, specifically the European market. So Sony's Jim Ryan discussed that they have a commanding lead in Europe, in most European countries, continental Europe. Some territories, it's easily over 70%, whereas some places in Europe, it's easily over 90%. And this isn't necessarily something Sony needs to tell you. I mean, you can look up these numbers anytime you want. You can constantly see weekly sales. VG Charts has all these numbers for you to look at. Of course, VG Charts isn't entirely accurate, but they are definitely within a good estimate of their numbers. They're not entirely that far off, so you can always see these numbers. And yeah, Sony does have a pretty damn good lead. I mean, consistently every week, Sony is outselling Xbox One nearly 2-1 in Europe. And of course, worldwide, Sony is just nudging out 2-1. Worldwide, and of course, when you're looking at overall console sales, Sony is getting close to a 2-1 lead. They're at, you know, a little over 20 million systems. Microsoft's a little over 10 million systems. So yeah, Sony's just absolutely dominating right now. In Europe, yeah, Europe, they're doing so well in Europe. And people always like to mention Japan, how Xbox One's basically non-existent in Japan. They sell a few hundred systems in Japan every week, which it's one of those things where it doesn't even like really matter at this point. Of course, the extra few thousand systems Sony sells there definitely helps their worldwide number, but realistically Sony still has trouble, is just now finally getting a foothold in Japan and finally starting to make their console more relevant there. Going back to kind of the China market, I mean, that even though the numbers in China are so small, it's a market you didn't have to begin with. So even though you're only selling like 200,000 some odd consoles, along with Microsoft only selling a couple 200,000 some odd consoles, it's still an extra 200,000 systems and extra software and everything that you didn't have before, because that previously wasn't even a market to begin with. So, but yeah, Sony's doing good. That's always a new story we have on here nowadays, that Sony's doing really good. Alright, now let's talk about the Naughty Dog news. A lot of stuff going on, specifically Nolan North, of course. The Nathan Drake voice actor has been spilling a lot of beans recently. Just a can of beans just all over the gosh darn floor, Nolan. What are you doing, man? Watch where you're going. So at MetroCon, he did a bunch of Q&A, did a panel, answering a whole bunch of stuff. One thing he talked about was the Amy Hennig thing. Of course, Amy Hennig was the creative director and writer for most of the Uncharted games. And we all know that she actually left Naughty Dog, and there was kind of a conspiracy there about what happened there. Was she fired? Did she leave willingly? What went on there? He went into some slight detail about that, and that apparently when Amy and the team were working on Uncharted 4, they had about 8 months worth of like work made on Uncharted 4, right? And basically 8 months of that work was thrown out once Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley came onto the project, and all the Last of Us guys, like the Last of Us development team, moved on to help with Uncharted 4 and actually get that project really kicking off. About 8 months of work were thrown off of that with Amy Hennig's work. I would presume, a rewrite of the story and everything. Of course, they also got rid of Todd Stashwick, who was a voice actor who's going to be in the game. They brought in Troy Baker, of course. So a lot of this really adds up. But we didn't get complete detail about Amy Hennig. They still apparently are very, very close friends, which you can actually see. I mean, if you go on Amy Hennig's Facebook, for example, she's posting all sorts of pictures about how she still has lunch with Nolan North and all the voice actors from the game and stuff. And yeah, so I mean that's nice. That's nice to know that there's definitely no sour feelings there. But very interesting to know that you had all this work with Uncharted 4 and it was completely thrown out the window to the point where 8 months of work, that's got to be a completely different game, which means we're getting something completely different. Now, you wouldn't know what the game was previously once we play Uncharted 4, but it's just always so mind-boggling to think about something like that. Now, the one big thing that Nolan North said this past week that is really making huge headlines is that he pretty much outright not confirmed, but offhandedly mentioned that The Last of Us 2 is apparently a thing. So during the Q&A, people were asking him hey, or somebody asked him what projects do you have lined up, and he said nothing right now. For Naughty Dog specifically, in reference to this, he said, I know they're doing a Last of Us 2, but my character in Last of Us kind of had an untimely demise. Now, if you don't know, spoiler alert, Nolan North had a character in The Last of Us that ended up dying. So, but this is him pretty much outright saying, yeah, The Last of Us 2 is totally a thing. And just, such an offhanded, indirect way, just The Last of Us 2 is already confirmed. Oh yeah, I know they're doing The Last of Us 2, but, my character wasn't that, so I don't know if I'll join that project or whatever. Pretty much outright saying it, right? And then Troy Baker, who we all know is the voice actor of Joel in The Last of Us, he said that he doesn't know what they're doing, and that whatever Naughty Dog plans to do, he doesn't know, but he has faith and confidence that whatever they do is going to be good, or if they want to tell another story or what have you. The general defensive PR kind of statement in the off chance that he is working on The Last of Us 2 and he can't say anything about it. That's the thing about these situations, is that when you get somebody that says something so casually like that, it makes it a lot more believable than the guy that is obviously involved in the project, if there is a project, who isn't going to answer that it is a real thing because he's involved in the real thing and they want to do a reveal for the game and they want to show you that it's an actual new thing. This is why I always tell you guys, when you're listening to a developer interview or something, or you ask somebody if they're working on a game or blah 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 and they say no, or this feature isn't coming or something like that, you can't believe any of that shit, because obviously they're not going to answer it for you. They want to save all these things for announcements, for press shows. They want to do a press release. They want to be on an E3 stage and show it to the world right off the bat when millions of people are watching. They're not just going to answer it in an interview, yeah, The Last of Us 2 is real, because they're going to want to reveal it at some point. So That's the thing about situations like these, is that Nolan North, for example, is probably more believable than, say, Troy Baker right now. Now, of course, the one thing that you can always look at is Nolan North. It's very possible that he's in a situation where he's not allowed to know what other teams at Naughty Dog are doing, and he only hears ramblings from, friends of friends or what have you, that The Last of Us 2 is a thing, but it really isn't a thing because he's not that closely involved with the other project or what have you, but he just offhandedly says it like he knows it as a fact or whatever, which kind of seems dumb and not smart if you're the kind of guy that's a voice actor and you have interviews with people about the projects you're doing and the projects of the developer that you're involved with, and stuff like that. Not really a smart move on Nolan's part, I have to admit. But there's a very real possibility that he legit doesn't know that The Last of Us 2 is or is not a thing. Either way, I personally think it's safe to say The Last of Us 2 is absolutely a thing. We all know The Last of Us was an incredible success. Whether you did or did not like it, you cannot deny how good it has done for not only in terms of sales, for Sony's reputation, for the fact that the game just was critically acclaimed. Clearly the game did well, and Sony knows that, Naughty Dog knows that, and they more than likely want to continue that name. Anyway, those are some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. Check out this week's episode of Round 9 Gaming. The topic was Final Fantasy 15. It's been in development for a very long time. It probably is costing millions of dollars, like many AAA games cost nowadays. Will that game actually turn a profit? Will it actually make money? That's the question we're looking at right now. Will it actually do those things? Who knows? If you want to see the conversation, check it out. Also, okay, so for this Monday, will probably be a video game teacher. I will start recording the Jak 2 Let's Play very, very soon. I'm very busy right now. I'm working a lot of days at my job, so you gotta bear with me there. But I will definitely be recording that very, very soon. It'll probably be up like the week after or something, hopefully. I got a few other videos that I want to get squeezed out first, before we get on a new Let's Play schedule. So let me just get all that stuff straightened out, and we'll be all good to go. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys all next Friday. Oh my god, I'm so white. I need to go to a beach or something and fucking tan. Oh my god. You hear that?